meditation is supposed to be fun. It's not something you do as a grim duty. The trouble with religion as we know it is that it is so mixed up with grim duties. We do it because it's good for you. It's a kind of self-punishment. Well, meditation, when correctly done, has nothing to do with all that. It's a kind of digging the present. It's a kind of grooving with the eternal now. And brings us into a state of peace where we can understand that the point of life, the place where it's at, is simply here and now.
This moment is the creation of the universe. It's starting now. If you look back and wonder whether there was a big bang a long time ago, all you'll see is vanishing traces. The big bang is happening now. This is when the world begins. You're doing it. Only you're not doing it by straining. A you deeper than the straining you is doing all this. The same you that is growing your hair and coloring your eyes and making your thumbprints and all that. You don't think about it. You don't strain muscles to do it. But that is what is creating the world. Here it comes. Now. So instead of thinking that the past is the reality which explains everything that happens now, let's look at now.
On the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle. Thank you guys all for joining. This is the Law of One series. We're doing sessions 35 and 36 tonight, and I'm excited. We've got some cool stuff that we're going to talk about. I'm going to get into it. I already have a couple questions, which I don't know, I kind of like, I guess. At first I was like, we've got a structured, but structure's not what this is about, right? We got coming at this in our perfect ways, and I like that. Think had a powerful question. Now, we're going to cover this tonight. And so I maybe get you to rephrase the question. I think it's after probably the second session, 36. But the question is, if we have different versions of ourself in different time spaces, like a multiverse concept, and we choose our experiences, then do all portions of us amend in unison? We talk about that specifically, that higher self or that omniself or whatever it is. And this... it's funny. It's because I don't remember this part when I've read this prior. This caught me in a cool way today, and it sort of made sense. But where our higher self, what density it's located at, how that works and corresponds with service to self versus service to other, or kind of sort of negative versus positive, it seems. So it's a really cool question. Higher self is in the sixth density. They'll kind of cover, I think, more about that, and I'm curious where your question kind of evolves from there, where I will say they answer what you're saying, but again, we'll see what you want. And she says ascend, not amend, which I hope I said that right. We'll see. Pet 1985, he said, hey, Dan, have you read a channeling handbook by Carla L. Ruckert? Carla is the one that actually does the channeling in these Law of One sessions. And so it's always her when they say, is there anything we need to do to make the instrument more comfortable? That's Carla. Carla's the instrument. And so, no, I have not actually read that. Tonight, oddly, talks about Jane Roberts. She was one of the people I kind of read, which I don't know if directly led me to this, but in a number of steps did for me. Law of One was something I came upon well after it came out. Not way after, but I don't know. It'd be hard to say because they did it in the 80s. I want to say it was probably later 90s when I was coming across it. So, I mean, again, it was all part of in my path, just personally. And again, why it's so fun for me to teach, learn, teach with you guys. Let's see. Pet also said the book led me to Law of One, which it's funny how many things will lead us to different places, and it's like the joke to what 12 steps to Kevin Bacon or whatever, like 12 angles or whatever it is, 12 degrees, right? Like whatever it is, it'll always lead back to Kevin Bacon. I feel like large extent life is funny like that. Like it'll always lead you to where you need to go. Like it might take you a couple angles to get there, like a 22-point turn, but you make the turn. It's fun. Let's see. Sheila said, question. Do you think the dreams mentioned here have a correlation to the nightmares mentioned by Swaru? Basically, is it possible that we are stuck in our own mind fears, hence need wanderers? There's possibility to that. Many people being trapped somewhat in the thinking process that the stuff we've created here is real. A great example of that in my mind also is What Dreams May Come. Robin Williams goes back to actually save his wife, who's created this nightmarish scene that she believes is real. And she's living this, and it's separation from reality, from source, from creator, from whatever. And so, there is, I think, an angle to that. I think there are a lot of lost souls here. I don't know if the souls can be eaten and stuff. I've been hearing some of that. So some of the stuff I bet may tie in with Swaru. And I don't necessarily want to say I'm saying there's a guy I watch, and it might be the same person, Sheila, you're bringing up. But there's a guy I watch that brings up him and some other people that they've got like their own little versions of Galactic Federation people that are like apparently arm wrestling each other. I don't know what's going on. But I mean, long time ago, Ashtar was one of the ones that I was like sort of brought awareness to, and then that kind of spun into other stuff and experiences and other people and whatever. Like it's just I don't know. We all have our own unique journeys, is what I've come to find, and sometimes easier to do person to person. When you're trying to work with somebody, it's a lot of the times like any of the teaching I've typically done in the past. This is sort of different nowadays, but the different teaching in the past was I had one person, I'd meet them, I'd have a few people, but like it was never like trying to put together a message that makes sense across many different variants of belief and understanding. It's very easy to tailor a story depending on who you are as an individual, but it's extremely hard to make something that works for everybody. I find. But since I really do consider myself a teacher of teachers, it's you guys that are actually the teachers out there that are most important. The ones that are graduating are graduating, but it's really you guys in the overall big picture that's causing the change. I brought it up today, the 100th monkey. If you guys have ever heard of that theory, maybe look it up. I don't want to spend a lot of time, but eventually they say once 100 monkeys, it could be across the world, learn how to do, like maybe take a stick and open up a coconut. The 100th monkey finally figures it out, and then suddenly every monkey on the planet knows how to open coconuts with a stick. So they call it the 100th monkey syndrome. Whether it's exactly 100 or what is irrelevant, but there is a certain level of, once there's a consciousness towards an outcome, that consciousness has power. And once you get a few more consciousnesses towards that same outcome, the power becomes multiplied. And even they say exponentially, but that's not necessarily getting into tonight's show. But again, so awesome questions. And we're starting everything off with that. It should be good ones. Famous people's journey, how they, and this is the 35th, famous people, their journey, like Lincoln, he's got a couple people listed, Roosevelt, I think, and Hitler, I believe, are the three. And sort of kind of asking Ra, hey, dude, what do you think about these peeps, right? How was their density thing going? What was their propensity towards service to self, service to others? I think it's kind of cool, kind of fascinating. There is a level, and Hitler's one of them, where channeling's a funny thing. I'm just going to say this to everybody and all. I might know a thing or two, but I'm going to say this. What matters in channeling is the filters. And I'm going to say that kind of blanketly. Filters are basically beliefs, for the simple part, but there's kind of things that go sort of deeper rooted sometimes. But when we have a belief that something's a certain way and then we channel information about it, if it doesn't fit into that funnel's going to get it to fit, And so oftentimes our beliefs will taint or color the message that we are receiving. Not that I'm, wherever you are on that whole spectrum, but it will and does color messages that come. And people's actual beliefs, and depending how far down you go clearing your beliefs, but a lot of us have beliefs that are very shallow, I think, and you'll even hear people sometimes channeling stuff around those beliefs. Again, it's just, when you learn to clear out a lot of the nonsense inside, when you learn to really sort of react with the world around you and pay attention to it, and then that really starts to put you in check because you start to see it directly and you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. I get it. I see what I'm doing. It will enhance and change your life a lot. And so a lot of these things do start to come together, do start to make sense. And that's a big part of what the ascension is us taking control of our thoughts, of our consciousness. That's one thing that a lot of people don't want to do. And ultimately, that's part of the process, is hitting that green ray energy, coming at things with a loving heart for sure. And then there's expansion beyond that. And that's a lot of what's fun about Law of One, because I think many of us are at different levels, if you will, without saying it. I don't know how else to say it. And so because of that, it makes the journey tougher when it's a broader group. You know what I mean? Like I said, one-on-one, I can handle anybody. But broad group's tough. And so we do our best with this. So again, this is not necessarily for everybody. I got a lot of people in my audience that I think this is uncomfortable for them. That's okay. Just don't watch. You don't have to. This isn't really necessarily for you. I mean, maybe it's something you might want to listen to and see. Usually I don't say anything too crazy, but we are getting outside of the comfort zones in a lot of places. So I do understand that. Session 35, Famous People's Journeys. We're going to kick it off right here. Remember, this was recorded like 1980 or whatever, but it's right here on the Fringe, Dan RadioStyle. The Law of One, Session 35, recorded March 6th, 1981. Ra. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. We communicate now. Questioner. I would like to say that we consider this a great privilege to be doing this work and hope that we are going to question in a direction that will be of value to the readers of this material. This session, I thought that possibly inspecting the effect on the rays of different well-known figures in our history might be help in understanding how the catalyst of the illusion creates spiritual growth. I was making a list here, and the first I thought we might possibly hit the high points on as to the effect of the catalyst of the individual's working life would be the one known as Franklin D. Roosevelt. Could you say something about that entity? Ra. I am Ra. It is to be noted that in discussing those who are well known among your people, there is the possibility that information may be seen to be specific to one entity, whereas in actuality the great design of experience is much the same for each entity. It is within this mind that we should discuss the experiential forces which offered catalyst to an individual. It is further to be noted that in the case of those entities lately incarnate upon your plane, much distortion may have taken place in regards to misinformation and misinterpretation of an entity's thoughts or behaviors. We shall now proceed to, shall we say, speak of the basic parameters of the one known as Franklin. When any entity comes into third density incarnation, each of its energy centers is potentiated, but must be activated by the self-using experience. The one known as Franklin developed very quickly up through red, orange, yellow, and green, and began to work in the blue ray energy center at a tender age, as you would say. This rapid growth was due, firstly, to previous achievements in the activation of these rays, secondly, to the relative comfort and leisure of its early existence, thirdly, due to the strong desire upon the part of the entity to progress. This entity mated with an entity whose blue ray vibration were of a strength more than equal to its own, thus acquiring catalyst for further growth in that area that was to persist throughout the incarnation. This entity had some difficulty with continued green ray activity due to the excessive energy which was put into the activities regarding other selves and the distortion towards acquiring power. This was to have its toll upon the physical vehicle, as you may call it. The limitation of the non-movement of a portion of the physical vehicle opened, once again, for this entity, the opportunity for concentration upon the more, shall we say, universal or idealistic aspects of power, that is, the non-abusive use of power. Thus, at the outset of a bellicose action, this entity had lost some positive polarity due to excessive use of the orange and yellow ray energies at the expense of green and blue ray energies. Then had regained the polarity due to the catalyst effect of a painful limitation upon the physical complex. This entity was not of a bellicose nature, but rather, during the conflict, continued to vibrate in green ray working with the blue ray energies. The entity, who was the one known as Franklin's teacher, also functioned greatly during this period of blue ray activator, not only for its mate, but also in a more universal expression. This entity polarized continuously in a positive fashion in the universal sense, while, in a less universal sense, developing a pattern of what may be called karma. This karma having to do with inharmonious relationship distortions with the mate teacher. Questioner: two things I would like to clear up. Then, Franklin's teacher was his wife? Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner: secondly, did Franklin place the limitation on his physical body himself? Ra: I am Ra. This is partially correct. The basic guidelines for the lessons and purposes of incarnation had been carefully set forth before incarnation by the mind-body-spirit complex totality. If the one known as Franklin had avoided the excessive enjoyment of or attachment to the competitiveness, which may be seen to be inherent in the process of its occupation, this entity would not have had the limitation. However, the desire to serve and to grow was strong in this programming, and when the opportunities began to cease due to these distortions towards love of power, the entity's limiting factor was activated. Questioner: I would now like to ask for the same type of information with respect to Adolf Hitler. You have given a little of this already. It is not necessary to recover what you have already given, but if you could complete that information, it would be helpful. Ra: I am Ra. In speaking of the one you call Adolf, we have some difficulty due to the intense amount of confusion present in this entity's life patterns, as well as the great confusion which greets any discussion of this entity. Here, we see an example of one who, in attempting activation of his highest rays of energy, while lacking the green ray key, canceled itself out as far as polarization either towards positive or negative. This entity was basically negative. However, its confusion was such that the personality disintegrated, thus leaving the mind-body-spirit complex unharvestable and much in need of healing. This entity followed the pattern of negative polarization which suggests the elite and the enslaved, this being seen by the entity to be of a helpful nature for the societal structure. However, in drifting from the conscious polarization into what you may call a twilight world where dream took the place of events in your space-time continuum, this entity failed in its attempt to serve the Creator in a harvestable degree along the path of service to self. Thus, we see the so-called insanity which may often arise when an entity attempts to polarize more quickly than experience may be integrated. We have advised and suggested caution and patience in previous communications, as do so again, using this entity as an example of the over-hasty opening of polarizations without due attention to the synthesized and integrated mind-body-spirit complex. To know yourself is to have the foundation upon firm ground. Questioner: thank you. An important example, I believe. I was wondering if any of those were subordinate to Adolf at this time were able to polarize in harvestable nature on the negative path. Ra: I am Ra. We can speak only of two entities who may be harvestable in a negative sense, others still being in the physical incarnation. One known to you as Herman, the other known as it's preferred to be called Himmler. Questioner: thank you. Earlier we discussed Abraham Lincoln as a rather unique case. Is it possible for you to tell us what the orientation was and why the fourth density being used Abraham's body, and when this took place with respect to the activities that were occurring in our society at that time? Ra: I am Ra. This is possible. Questioner: would it be of value for the reader to know this in your estimation? Ra: I am Ra. You must shape your queries according to your discernment. Questioner: well, in that case, I would like to know the motivation for the use of Abraham Lincoln's body at that time. Ra: I am Ra. This shall be the last full query of this session, as we find the instrument quite low in vital energies. The one known as Abraham had an extreme difficulty in many ways, and, due to physical, mental, and spiritual pain, was weary of life, but without the orientation to self-destruction. In your time, 1853, this entity was contacted in sleep by a fourth-density being. This being was concerned with the battle between the forces of light and the forces of darkness, which have been waged in fourth density for many of your years. This entity accepted the honor duty of completing the one known as Abraham's karmic patterns, and the one known as Abraham discovered that this entity would attempt those things which the one known as Abraham desired to do, but felt it could not. Thus, the exchange was made. The entity, Abraham, was taken to a plane of suspension until the cessation of his physical vehicle, much as though we of Ra would arrange with this instrument to remain in the vehicle, come out of the trance state, and function as this instrument, leaving this instrument's mind and spirit complex in its suspended state. The planetary energies at this time were at what seemed to this entity to be at a critical point, for that which you know as freedom had gained in acceptance as a possibility among many peoples. This entity saw the work done by those beginning the democratic concept of freedom, as you call it, in danger of being abridged or abrogated by the rising belief and use of the principle of the enslavement of entities. This is a negative concept of a very serious nature in your density. This entity, therefore, went forward into what it saw as the battle for the light, for healing of a rupture in the concept of freedom. This entity did not gain or lose karma by these activities due to its detachment from any outcome. Its attitude throughout was one of service to others, more especially to the downtrodden or enslaved. The polarity of this individual was somewhat, but not severely, lessened by the cumulative feelings and thought forms which were created due to a large number of entities leaving the physical plane due to trauma of battle. May we ask if this is the information you requested, or if we may supply any further information? Questioner: if there are any further questions, I will ask them in the next period, which should occur in about 4 days. I do not want to overtire the instrument. I will only ask if there is anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or improve the contact. Ra: I am Ra. All is well. I leave you, my friends, in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one Creator. Adonai. And again, for people that, maybe have a hard time from a religious standpoint, but it's the one Creator, the one Lord, the one God, right? Like and whether we break that down into individual, the human form of that, or the Father form, right? Like, there's a lot of ways to look at this stuff, and I think when we come to that level, this information bridges many religions because of its sort of that approach. All said. We do have a couple questions, which I'm totally going to get to. Quick through the notes. Franklin, they get into programming. So in his case, the bellicose nature, power over others versus power with others, is sort of a different concept. And sometimes people came in here that knew that they were going to gravitate towards strong energy. Like when you open up your upper energies, the green ray up, you become much like you're manifesting, like kicks in like times 10, times 100. Like it's noticeable. It makes a huge difference. And it's also what you'll get knocked down from if you can't maintain positive thoughts. I liken your thoughts to that dude that's got the laser glasses, right? The dude that takes his eyes and just burns everything with his eyes. Whatever he stares at, he burns, right? And then he gets the glasses, the X-Men, whatever, right? Like that is what our thoughts are, except there's really no glasses. And if you don't learn how to control your thoughts, you don't graduate. You don't go to the higher levels where you can literally stuff with your thoughts. So that's the thing, is a lot of people aren't quite ready. And when they come here, they know they're going to hit the power centers quick. And if they don't stay aligned, if they don't stay in their higher energy centers, or at least, well, the lower energy centers are fine as long as you're using them in the positive sense, because there's power. The lower orange and yellows are very powerful from the standpoint of working with other people in very physical things. But having power over others versus power with others, again, is a very big discernment. And so because Franklin got off that track because of bellicose nature, he ended up not being able to walk, right? He was wheelchair bound. So some of that stuff they talk about, that's a way that we sort of program ourselves in line. Now, a lot of people don't like to think that things that happen to themselves are their own creation, but that unfortunately is the truth. In fact, some people don't like the fact that like you talk about like the self concept, like you should focus on making sure know thyself, right? And that sounds selfish. And I guess I'm going to work on getting better answers with this, because this is part of my learning teaching right now. I mean, in this stuff. But to me, it feels like like when the plane is going down and they say, when the mask falls down, make sure you put it on yourself before your child. Is that selfish, or is that the right way to handle a situation where you can't help others if you're not helped? So in a lot of cases, making sure you don't become a drowning victim because you're trying to save someone who's drowning. Because a lot of times they'll push you down under the water to try to stay on top of you like an iceberg. So again, I don't know. Central answer on that one. So yeah, teacher relationship. He also talked about that, how his wife was his teacher. There can be some problems with that big time, and so that's something to keep in mind as well. If you have a teacher-student relationship, that is a power thing. That is very yellow-orange ray, and that's cool. That's groovy, and you can help somebody get up into their upper rays without taking advantage of them. So again, there's examples of this going in, I think, a lot of directions, right? Like you get like I want to think like Waco, and that's probably a bad example. I'm just, for some reason, there was the purple Nike people when the comet went over. They all drank their little Gatorade thing or whatever and died. I feel like there's a few of them, but anyway, not trying to get off too weird in the weeds. Okay, too weird maybe is like what? Anyway, so that's teacher relationship. Usually it creates a bit of that counterbalance energy, and that can be difficult in relationships. So just something to keep in mind. All right, Adolf confusion. This was what I was talking about when I think there's a lot of information out about Adolf. Adolf was a very complex individual, historically, personally, from what we have been able to understand, right? And what likely occurred post Hitler versus what many people, especially in 1980, believed about Hitler. So a lot of the stuff that I feel Carla channeled with Hitler is it follows what the cabal's always told us about Hitler. So I think for anybody that's trying to get something different outside of that, not good. One of the things that did come through that I think is important is polarizing too quickly. They talk about knowing thyself. If you polarize too quickly, if you move through the ranks really fast, I want to do this super fast. A lot of people do that. It's kind of funny. And again, I've said before, I guess this is more the appropriate place to say it, but I don't like it's braggadocious a little, in my opinion. But the one thing that I did, and it was more accidental, kind of knew it worked, but it was accidental, but I made a declaration, and it was in learning that the I am statement is of one of the most powerful things you can say to the universe, source, God, whatever. And when you declare it with truth, you experience it, especially if you know it. And I am a master was the thing I said. And the experiences that the next 20 years of my life had for me, that was the surprise. But again, we all travel down the paths we're meant to. And there's masters in many things. So being one doesn't necessarily make me special in any way. I just, there's certain things. I know how to deal cards really well. No, I'm just kidding. That's not even one of them. But so polarizing too quickly, not being prepared, 20 years in my case, you need that. If it happens too fast, you can't handle it. In my case, some of the success, if you will, that I'm gaining from just people seeing what I'm doing and what that brings, and there's a lot to it, and it's strange. It's a show unto itself, but you kind of can't. But it helps. You got to balance before you can walk into the crazy waters. Otherwise, you're going to fall. You're going to fall in. So polarize too quickly. That's what happens. Lincoln, wanderer. He was also a walk-in, or as they talked about, an exchange. Walk-ins are a very interesting thing. I might know a thing or two about that. I'm supposedly 7 years, 7 months, and it does affect like my memories, certainly. And I've had some just crazy experiences in my life post that period of time. So it's, again, I don't know. I've had a very interesting life, is all I can say, folks. And whatever craziness is inside of me is who I am. And whatever you believe that is to be yourself is your belief. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And so I think Franklin's another example. You come in charged and hot, and if you're not ready to adjust quickly, you can. It can feel like you're shooting through water, or trying to run through jello or run through water. It's just weird. It's crazy. So all that said, and higher density balance accepted. So, I don't know. There was some talk about how people were confused up top. I don't know what I meant by that last statement, so it's probably good that I'm leaving it alone. Now, I did have a question, and I'm going to get to the question here. Patriots Daryl said, did FDR get polio to get him to return to his life path? And yeah, the answer is big time yes, and I think I probably even answered that. But it was and will happen, and so many. There's two things that are very hard for people to accept, I think, that are true in life. I think that are true in life. Doesn't mean they are, right? Okay. But two things that I think that are tough is, one, that we live more than one life. And two, that we, in this next 36, by the way, session 36 gets into this, that we play a way, way, way larger role in what our experience is than most of us want to admit. Anybody that puts anything outside of themselves as far as the fix, meaning someone, it'll get handled by others, I'm just waiting for them to do it, like anything like that is false. Anything that you're experiencing in your life, and this is where put your mask on yourself first. It's hard to say, but anybody that's experiencing anything that is difficult, it's really wise to look inward and try to understand why. Oftentimes there is a dislike towards, or there is this thing I say over and over, this is what I think, so this is what I keep experiencing. I don't know, a good example, getting cut off, right? I had a friend that if you cut him off, he'd run past him and cut you off. And I'm like, why do you do that? And he's like, because he cut me off. And I'm like, but if you do it to him again, now you're continuing, right? It's like paying it forward. That concept, right? Someone buys your food before you get there, and you buy the next person's food. Sometimes it's whatever, might be good, might be bad. It is what it is, but it's kind of a fun way to do something special. Anyway, so a lot of things. Okay, anyway, this last one, 36, goes into mind, body, spirit, complex totality. This is essentially what I think Law of One calls the higher self, the overself. Is the mind, body, spirit, which is typically that 3D part of us. That's the one that we are right now. We're the mind, body, spirit complex. But the totality. Now, someone was asking earlier, what if I have these other lives going around in other dimensions or anything? Totality. So they explain, sort of outside of time, the way we understand it. I think we experience time more incremental in our experience of it, versus the reality of time where everything's right now and this has all happened already, which, there's a puff pass, try to talk about thing moment, right? But it is what it is, and we're all in different varying understandings of that, self included. I'm not going to say I'm a master of that by any stretch of the imagination. Session 36, Law of One, I think it was recorded like 3-4 days later. It's right here on The Fringe. The Law of One, Session 36, recorded March 10th, 1981. Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the one infinite creator. We communicate now. Questioner, in previous communications you have spoken of the mind-body-spirit complex totality. Would you please give us a definition of the mind-body-spirit complex totality? Ra, I am Ra. There is a dimension in which time does not have sway. In this dimension, the mind, body, spirit, in its eternal dance of the present, may be seen in totality, and before the mind, body, spirit complex, which then becomes a part of a social memory complex, is willingly absorbed into the allness of the one creator. The entity knows itself in its totality. This mind-body-spirit complex totality functions as, shall we say, a resource for what you perhaps would call the higher self. The higher self, in turn, is a resource for examining the distillations of the third density experience and programming further experience. This is also true of densities 4, 5, and 6, with the mind-body-spirit complex totality coming into consciousness in the course of the 7th density. Questioner: then would the mind-body-spirit complex totality be responsible for programming changes in catalysts during, say, a third density experience of the mind-body-spirit complex, so that the proper catalyst would be added, shall we say, as conditions for that complex change during third density experience? Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. This is incorrect. The higher self, as you call it, that is, that self which exists with full understanding of the accumulation of experiences of the entity, aids the entity in achieving healing of the experiences which have not been learned properly, and assist, as you have indicated, in further life experience programming, as you may call it. The mind-body-spirit complex totality is that which may be called upon by the higher self aspect, just as the mind-body-spirit complex calls upon the higher self. In the one case, you have a structured situation within the space-time continuum with the higher self having available to it the totality of experiences which have been collected by an entity and a very firm grasp of the lessons to be learned in this density. The mind-body-spirit complex totality is as the shifting sands and is in some part of a collection of parallel developments of that same entity. This information is made available to the higher self aspect. This aspect may then use these projected probability-possibility vortices in order to better aid in what you would call future life programming. Questioner: out of the Seth material, we have a statement here. Seth says that each entity here on Earth is one aspect or part of a higher self or oversoul, which has many aspects or parts in many dimensions, all of which learn lessons which enable the higher self to progress in a balanced manner. Am I to understand from this, is it correct that there are, shall we say, possibly many experiences similar to the one that we are experiencing here in the third density that are governed by a single higher self? Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. The correctness of this statement is variable. The more in balance an entity becomes, the less the possibility-probability vortices may need to be explored in parallel experiences. Questioner: do I understand from this then that the higher self or overself may break down into numerous units if the experience is required to what we would call simultaneously experience different types of catalysts and then oversee these experiences? Ra: I am Ra. This is a statement we cannot say to be correct or incorrect due to the confusion of what you call time. True simultaneity is available only when all things are seen to be occurring at once. This overshadows the concept of which you speak. The concept of various parts of the being living experiences of varying natures simultaneously is not precisely accurate due to your understanding that this would indicate that this was occurring with true simultaneity. And this is not the case. The case is from universe to universe, and parallel existences can then be programmed by the higher self, given the information available from the mind-body-spirit complex totality regarding the probability-possibility vortices at any crux. Questioner: could you give an example of an entity, possibly one from our historical past, possibly an entity that you might choose if you don't wish to name one, and give an example of how this type of programming by the higher self would then bring about the education through parallel experiences, please? Ra: I am Ra. Perhaps the simplest example of this apparent simultaneity of existence of two selves, which are, in truth, one self at the same time-space, is this. The oversoul, as you call it, or higher self, seems to exist simultaneously within the mind-body-spirit complex which it aids. This is not actually simultaneous, for the higher self is moving to the mind-body-spirit complex as needed from a position in development of the entity which would be considered in the future of this entity. Questioner: then the higher self operates from the future as we understand things. In other words, my higher self would operate from what I consider to be my future. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. From the standpoint of your space-time, this is correct. Questioner: in that case, my higher self would, shall we say, have a very large advantage in knowing precisely what was needed, since it would know what, as far as I am concerned, what was going to happen. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. This is incorrect, in that this would be an abrogation of free will. The higher self aspect is aware of the lessons learned through the sixth density. The progress rate is fairly well understood. The choices which must be made to achieve the higher self as it is are in the provenance of the mind-body-spirit complex. Thus, the higher self is like the map in which the destination is known. The roads are very well known, these roads being designed by intelligent infinity, working through intelligent infinity. However, the higher self aspect can program only for the lessons and certain predisposing limitations if it wishes. The remainder is completely the free choice of each entity. There is the perfect balance between the known and the unknown. Questioner: I'm sorry for having so much trouble with these concepts, but they are pretty difficult to translate, I am sure, into our understanding and language. And some of my questions may be rather ridiculous, but does the higher self have a physical vehicle or some type of vehicle like our physical vehicle? Does it have a bodily complex? Ra: I am Ra. This is correct. The higher self is of a certain advancement within sixth density going into the seventh. After the seventh has been well entered, the mind-body-spirit complex becomes so totally a mind-body-spirit complex totality that it begins to gather spiritual mass and approach the octave density. Thus, the looking backwards is finished at that point. Questioner: is the higher self of every entity of a sixth density nature? Ra: I am Ra. This is correct. This is an honor duty to self as one approaches seventh density. Questioner: well, let me be sure I understand this then. We have spoken of certain particular individuals. For instance, we were speaking of George Patton in a previous communication. Then his higher self, at the time of his incarnation here as George Patton about 40 years ago, his higher self was at that time sixth density. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. This is correct. We make note at this time that each entity has several beings upon which to call for inner support. Any of these may be taken by the entity to be the mind-body-spirit complex totality. However, this is not the case. The mind-body-spirit complex totality is a nebulous collection of all that may occur held in understanding. The higher self itself, a projection or manifestation of the mind-body-spirit complex totality, which then may communicate with the mind-body-spirit during the discarnate part of the cycles of rebirth, or during the incarnation may communicate if the proper pathways or channels through the roots of the mind are opened. Questioner: these channels would then be opened by meditation, and I'm assuming that intense polarization would help in this. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. This is partially correct. Intense polarization does not necessarily develop in the mind-body-spirit complex the will or need to contact the Oversoul. Each path of the life experience is unique. However, given the polarization, the will is greatly enhanced, and vice versa. Questioner: let me take as an example the one you said was called Himmler. We are assuming from this that his higher self was of sixth density, and it was stated that Himmler had selected the negative path. Would his higher self then dwell in the sixth density negative type of situation? Could you expand on this concept? Ra: I am Ra. There are no negative beings which have attained the Oversoul manifestation, which is the honor duty of the mind-body-spirit complex totality of the late sixth density, as you would term it in your time measurements. These negatively oriented mind-body-spirit complexes have a difficulty which, to our knowledge, has never been overcome, for after fifth density graduation, wisdom is available but must be matched with an equal amount of love. This love light is very, very difficult to achieve in unity when following the negative path, and during the earlier part of the sixth density, society complexes of the negative orientation will choose to release the potential and leap into the sixth density positive. Therefore, the Oversoul, which makes its understanding available to all who are ready for such aid, is towards the positive. However, the free will of the individual is paramount, and any guidance given by the higher self may be seen in either the positive or negative polarity, depending upon the choice of the mind-body-spirit complex. Questioner: then using Himmler as an example, was his higher self at the time he was incarnate in the 1940s a sixth density positively oriented higher self? Ra: I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner: was Himmler in any way in contact with his higher self at that time while he was incarnate in the 1940s? Ra: I am Ra. We remind you that the negative path is one of separation. What is the first separation? The self from the self. The one known as Himmler did not choose to use its abilities of will and polarization to seek guidance from any source but its conscious drives, self-chosen in the life experience and nourished by previous biases created in other life experiences. Questioner: well, then let's say that when Himmler, for instance, reaches sixth density negative at the beginning of the sixth density negative, at this time, would it be the case that an entity would realize that his higher self is sixth density positively oriented, and for that reason make the jump from negative to positive orientation? Ra: I am Ra. This is incorrect. The sixth density negative entity is extremely wise. It observes the spiritual entropy occurring due to the lack of ability to express the unity of sixth density. Thus, loving the Creator and realizing at some point that the Creator is not only self, but other self as self. This entity consciously chooses an instantaneous energy reorientation so that it may continue its evolution. Questioner: then the sixth density entity who has reached that point in positive orientation may choose to become what we call a wanderer and move back. I'm wondering if this ever occurs with a negatively oriented sixth density entity. Do any move back as wanderers? Ra: I am Ra. Once the negatively polarized entity has reached a certain point in the wisdom density, it becomes extremely unlikely that it will choose to risk the forgetting, for this polarization is not selfless, but selfish, and with wisdom realizes the jeopardy of such wandering. Occasionally, the sixth density negative entity becomes a wanderer in an effort to continue to polarize towards the negative. This is extremely unusual. Questioner: then what is the motivation for the... let me finish that question first. What is the mechanism for this unusual sixth density entity would wish to gain the polarized more negatively through wandering? Ra: I am Ra. The wanderer has the potential of greatly accelerating the density whence it comes in the progress in evolution. This is due to the intense life experiences and opportunities of the third density. Thusly, the positively oriented wanderer chooses to hazard the dangers of forgetting in order to be of service to others by radiating love of others. If the forgetting is penetrated, the amount of catalyst in the third density will polarize the wanderer with much great efficiency than shall be expected in the higher and more harmonious densities. Similarly, the negatively oriented wanderer dares to hazard the forgetting in order that it might accelerate its progress and evolution in its own density by serving itself in third density, by offering to other selves the opportunity to hear the information having to do with negative polarization. Questioner: are there any examples of sixth density negatively polarized wanderers in our historical past? Ra: I am Ra. This information could be harmful. We withhold it. Please attempt to view the entities about you as a part of the Creator. We can explain no further. Questioner: thank you. I was wondering if qualification for contact with Ra might include, of the types we are doing now, might include penetrating this forgotten process. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. This is quite correct. Questioner: otherwise the law of confusion would prohibit this. Is this correct? Ra: this is correct. Questioner: I was also wondering if 3 was the minimum number necessary for this type of working. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. For protection of this instrument, this is necessary as the minimum grouping, and also as the most efficient number due to the exceptional harmony in this group. In other groups, the number could be larger, But we have observed in this contact that the most efficient support is given by the individual mind, body, spirits present at this time. Questioner: I'm a little fuzzy on a point with respect to the higher self. Now we each, I am assuming, have a separate or different higher self at 6th density positive level. Is this correct? Each of us, in this room that is, here, the 3 of us. Ra: I am Ra. This shall be the last full question of this working. We shall attempt to aim for the intention of your query as we understand it. Please request any additional information. Firstly, it is correct that each in this dwelling place has one oversoul, as you may call it. However, due to the repeated harmonious interactions of this triad of entities, there may be seen to be a further harmonious interaction besides the 3 entities' higher selves. That is, each social memory complex has an oversoul of a type which is difficult to describe to you in words. In this group, there are 2 such social memory complex totalities blending their efforts with your higher selves at this time. Questioner: It is very difficult at times for us to even get a small percentage of understanding from some of these concepts because of our limitations of awareness here. I think some meditation on the communication today will help us in formulating questions about these concepts. Ra: I am Ra. May we ask for a brief query before we leave this instrument? Questioner: I'll just ask one little short one that you may not be able to answer before the final. The short one is, can you tell me what percentage of the wanderers on Earth today have been successful in penetrating the memory block and becoming aware of who they are? And then finally, is there anything that we can do to make this instrument more comfortable or improve the contact? Ra: I am Ra. We can approximate the percentage of those penetrating intelligently their status. This is between 8.5% and 9.75%. There is a larger percentile group of those who have a fairly well-defined, shall we say, symptomology indicating to them that they are not of this, shall we say, insanity. This amounts to a bit over 50% of the remainder. Nearly 1/3 of the remainder are aware that something about them is different. So you see there are many gradations of awakening to the knowledge of being a wanderer. We may add that it is to the middle and the first of these groups that this information will, shall we say, make sense. This instrument is well. The resting place is somewhat deleterious in its effect upon the comfort of the dorsal side of the instrument's physical vehicle. We have mentioned this before. You are conscientious. We leave you now, my friends. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing merrily in the power and the peace of the one Creator, Adonai. The last part is so important. I want to start there. By the way, welcome back on the Fringe, Dan RadioStyle, all that craziness, right? But wanderers, I think a lot of you all are wanderers. The ones I'm kind of definitely focusing a lot of this towards, but certainly the wanderer aspect of this is interesting. A lot of us can go a number of directions. A lot of us figure things out quickly. A lot of us come to that level of the laser beams working well quickly. And this is, it's important to learn how to focus those energies, right? So back in 1980, there was 8.5 to 9.34 or 9.75, I guess, really. People would have been wanderers, positive oriented. Negative ones coming here would be people that would just try to talk about how to be more, I guess, self-centered. I don't know. Many could say that's what we're doing here, but I'm talking about helping others all the time, so I don't think that's what I do. But a lot of the how to get other people to work for you, do things for you. A lot of the way management's structured in this world, they literally psychologically test to pull the kinds of people out that are more service to self. They make better management. If you're not that way, you probably aren't necessarily good for management. Maggie asked a question, and it was a good question, I thought. I should look at the question and make it easier. Do you feel that we are all here at this moment in time for a reason, especially here on your podcast? Well, from the podcast standpoint, the only people that actually hear me are the people that are there, right? I mean, obviously, otherwise they don't hear me. So I 100% towards the podcast people. Not necessarily live per se, but live is when something matters. It's going to be a bigger deal. This is just kind of fun. I think a lot of you guys enjoy the community stuff. I think actually live is not as good as doing pre-recorded, because the way the algorithm works with them is different. Like live is when it's cool. It's when you're live, it's great, but you're going against everybody else that's live at that moment. But when you do pre-recorded, it goes into this whole like people's queue, and a lot of people will watch your video there, and it gets promoted differently. So podcasts I don't give as much. They don't help as much in my world, I guess, is what I'm trying to do. I think I get more people helping me outside of that. So all that said, this idea that make sure I don't lose the question. That we're all here for a reason is 100% sure. Again, put the face mask on first, I think, is very important. Much like the sun has planets revolving around it, each one of us is the sun of our own experience, right? And we've got all sorts of planets with moons, with all sorts of extra stuff spinning around us at all times. And we balance that. And through a lot of what we think, say, and do, it creates peace and harmony, or the opposite direction, and everything in between. So our kind of importance as individuals coming together is kind of the co-creation concept. It's the idea that many of us are working on that own individual solar system, but at the same time, we want to be part of the galaxy. We want to be part of the larger group. We want to co-create. And so there is a place for all of these spectrums. Ultimately, we've got to learn how to not throw sand in other people's faces in the sandbox. Like when we get good at that, then we pretty much are allowed to kind of start skipping to the next level. And I mean, that's a simplistic way to put it, but it's very true. All right, so into the video stuff, and then I got some more questions coming in. Higher self, just the idea, it kind of equals the I am, and image and likeness. Many have said, and that was one of the things that was put in the book. But I do think many people right now, someone brought it up earlier or whatever, but many people I think are right now kind of a little lost. And if you are a higher density being lost, you quickly can create all sorts of doomy and gloomy things in your life, depression and stuff like that. I was definitely suicidal twice. I've said it before. And it's not like that's something that's important to me, but it's more how I got out of it was what I focused on. A lot of people focus on all the things that are going wrong in their lives, and what I found is when I focused on what was going right in my life, what was actually good in my life, all I had to do was just think differently, and my whole world started to change immediately, and I experienced it. I went from and so it was something that I knew for sure, at least in me, worked. And I find that most people, and I'm not a shrink, so I'm not trying to be anybody that I shouldn't. But what I've always found with myself is if I focus on like good things happen. And if I focus on crappy things tend to happen. And so what do I want to experience? And all right, I'll focus on more good stuff. And it's just how it's played out. And I think all of us, as we progress up this awakened status, you'll notice your manifestations happen much quicker. So again, it's just important to notice when you're jumping out of your lane, if you will. Drama meter is a good idea. I was talking about, I was thinking in my mind anyways, how would I choose the students? The drama meter, what kind of drama meter I got off them. If they had a lot of drama in their life, then I was like, yeah, you got so much stuff out of sorts. Your manifestations locally are a mess, right? You got a lot of asteroids you got to clean out in your solar system, right? But it's just you can kind of figure it out with people. They got a lot of crazy going on. It's like, that's definitely probably someone I shouldn't get in business with. Just saying. Simultaneous, confusion, universe to universe. Different times. So they're talking about the same life happening in the higher self. And from its standpoint, same is a funny thing because nothing's exactly in the exact same place, space, time thing. Right? You could be in another, a couple ways we can look at this. And I think both of them are actually a good way to look at it and using the two as multipliers, if you will. but like a monitor or electricity for that matter. But like monitors are like, 60 hertz, or you can do 120 hertz, and it's a different refresh rate. It's how fast it flickers, right? But if you think about it for a second, in between every single 120 times a second, which is ridiculous, there's empty space. You could have a whole separate life in that empty space for a flash of 120 hertz, just slightly offset. So you could theoretically have multiple lives simultaneously, just not in the same space-time, not in the same place. You couldn't, because each moment needs to happen as its own little snapshot in time, if you will. Yeah, kind of, that's a good analogy to get you there. So, yeah, just be careful on the whole time and parallel lives and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, they can totally happen, and it's just there's a complexity to it. Future is not for sure, by the way, from our standpoint. There's still decisions to be made. There's still thoughts and all that stuff that have to happen. So the future is not for sure. Every one of us has our own decisions to make in the next, 24 hours that are going to matter for the next whoever knows, right? Every day you make decisions. So future's not for sure until you make decisions and then experience it. This is one of the things I've been bringing up a lot lately is, a lot of people are criticizing what's happening as it's happening. Like what is happening right now is what's happening. Like it is what it is. And to say it shouldn't be how it is stupid, because it is what it is. And it's pointless to talk about how it shouldn't be this way. It's like, well, it is this way. So what do you mean? Like, how do we change it? Oh, there's a different thought. How do we steer this in a different direction, right? Like, so how do we get the conversation moved? I don't know. I don't know where I was exactly going with that, but the future is not for sure. Steering into the direction we're going. Yeah, there we go. That's kind of where I was going with it. Hopefully that makes sense. A few of you. Talking to higher self. You first off have to open up that green ray. If you don't do that, there's really little chance of that happening. It's very hard to do. You have to kind of go through weird experiences to do it, and it's odd because you're trying to stay super evil. So the people that are like legit, like here, fourth, fifth density service to self, probably go to these levels. This is some of the underground type stuff we've heard about. But for the most part, that is not who a lot of us are. So you got to get that green ray center, the big great leap, as it's been called. I think it was Dan Millman that called it that. But going from the third chakra to the fourth chakra is the green ray, is the fourth. There's a leap there. There's a thing that kind of happens with people when you experience that. That leap is significant. That leap is kind of the ascension process, essentially. And a lot of us have already done it. So it's like kind of once you flick the switch, it's like, all right, when the thing happens, you'll be fine, right? Like you just chill and then help as many people as you can flick the switch inside themselves. But ultimately, they got to do it. So that higher self talking, when you open yourself to be able to do that, the opportunity for anything to talk to you happens. So it could be negative, it could be positive, it could be anything in between. A lot of people do channeling stuff, and there's just information that doesn't sound positive, and you just unfortunately got to learn that. It's one of those things where if you're not aligned really well, if you don't have your foundation in place and you try to go too fast, you literally will open up your microphone to all sorts of crazy stuff and then start spouting off about how you've got this, that, and the other thing. I don't want to be specific, but it's crazy how it does end up working. So we got to be careful with all that. That's all I guess I'm trying to say. Love light to higher self. I don't know what I was saying. Negative path is separation in 6D. The idea, so 6D is where it really comes back to light love, and it's just kind of how 6D works, and they'll get into it more later. Anything that would actually exist as a 6D being negative or service to self would not really want to stay that way, because it's kind of on the outside of everything, is what they kind of describe it as. Like you're separating yourself literally from what you are, and you are creator source. All of us are, and in separating ourselves, all right, so here you are existing outside of it. Great, now what? You know what you're doing. And it's just like, yeah, it's stupid to do this. I am part of that, so let me join. And I'm part of it. And it's like, poof, you're back, you're in. So it's kind of crazy and cool like that. 6D Wanderer Danger. Again, it's just none of us know exactly. There's training we do before we come down here, but none of us know exactly how it's going to go. A lot of us have pre-programmed stuff in there. Some of us came in a little differently than others, and so we've got some also family body karma that comes in sometimes. But it is a fun experience altogether. Let's see, groups and numbers blending. So yeah, groups. They were talking about is 3 necessary to do this grouping, this channeling. And long story short, like for all you guys that maybe have groups where you kind of get all crazy spiritual and stuff like that, there's not a fixed number. There's not a max number. What you will notice is everybody brings their own kind of vibration to the table, if you will. And if any of those vibrations tend to not really correspond or correlate or resonate is the right word, with each other, then you will probably find difficulty with certain members. And so sometimes it's good to notice, like, oh, the 3 of us were having a great time week after week after week, and finally we invited this 4th person, and then everything got weird, right? Like, sometimes it's just, it changes things. Let's put it that way. So, all said, I think that was all the crazy questions I had, and I got some questions coming from people out there. Let's see. Sheila question, multiverse question. Could Trump be Patton? I mean, yeah, it could be. I honestly think there's not that many of us that are like, they say there's NPCs, non-player characters. I think there's not that many of us that are actual player characters, to be honest. I do think this is a giant video game. And I think we're trying to get a bunch of people to get out because they're like trapped in it, sort of, kind of. But sure, could this be a multiverse and Trump be Patton? Absolutely. He could very much be that same exact character. Tattoo Tammy question: would I be considered a wanderer? Tattoo, that's your place to figure out. I think that's what's fun about this content. It's funny, and you're someone that always pops into my mind when I think of that word, but I don't know. What do I know, right? You've only told me some of your experiences and what you're here doing. Come on, Tammy. Come on. Don't be like that. Of course, it's not good if the phone doesn't ring in the middle. You guys might hear my machine go off here. Anyway, think 02000 says, question, if the higher self is attached to all variation of us, does this also include past lives also? Yes. There's really no past, present, future. I feel like the difference is so awesome. You got to love when you're alive. Yeah, that's pretty much, yeah. I suck like that. It's horrible, in fact. So we got that going on. So the higher self, past lives, it sits above that umbrella, if you will. So you got the past lives happening almost simultaneously, if you will, even though there's separate times and spaces and all that. And they could chronologically even be different, whatever. But from the outside of that, from the higher self standpoint, it's outside of that time constraint, that concept of time. That's more, all right, what are all the groovy things I picked up from all those lives? What have I become from that? What have I learned from that? Who am I now because of that? How do I understand all of the other creators better because of that? Yeah, and that happens kind of as lives are happening, right? I don't know if there's ever a time where you don't ever have any feelers in the water. Maybe sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Maybe it just depends. But I think we always got feelers in the water. Tattoo Tammy had another question. So are all the densities all here on Earth right now, but we can only see the density we are at? So there's kind of a confusion between the concept of dimension and density. I do understand that the Earth is supposed to go to a new dimension. That is sort of a way big different thing. Technically speaking, if you've ever seen like in math, right, they had an XY axis, right, X and Y, that was two directions. Tattoos, you know that stuff. Third dimension would be the Z axis. Typically it's a up, but whatever. So you've got three dimensions right there. The fourth dimension would be another 90 degree off into some weird space that we can't really perceive, right now. There's a concept called a hypercube. You can look that up and see some pictures and kind of get a taste for what a fourth dimensional object would look like. Especially you, Tattoo. You would definitely benefit from trying to be able to visualize that, because it's really cool and you could probably make a bitchin' ass tattoo with it. That said, or even a cool nipple. She makes nipples for people. That'd be a cool looking nipple. Frankly, whatever. That's neither here nor there. The creation, I got myself all jacked on that. Yeah, past lives. So that higher self creation happens outside of there. I don't know where I was going with all that. But we are definitely connected to that same higher self. It's connected to source. It is source to a large extent. It is what's providing the experience for us. It is, for lack of the analogy I was using earlier, the one that's using the control panel for the video game. It's aware of everything that's going on, multiple monitors on a screen, however you want to envision it. It's kind of how it plays out. I think that's a cool question. A really cool question. All right. And I want to give a big thanks to Arlene for helping out with this. A lot of you guys chit-chatting in there, and I appreciate that. We got a lot of great people in the audience, and I love that. So thank you guys all for joining us. Again, hopefully we got all the questions covered. Stalling a hair just in case a couple creep through, but I think we're good. I think we're wonderful. All that said, we've got the outro to play, which is essentially the intro, but it all depends how you look at it, right? In and out. I don't know. Aloha in Hawaii, right? Same thing. They don't say hello. They don't say goodbye. They say both all the time. Aloha. Well, what does that even mean? We don't even know. Just we'll see you again or something. Yeah, it's crazy. All said. Aloha. I love you guys. I'm looking forward to next week, and also looking forward to tomorrow with some classic rock. Or we got a mixture of my favorite songs. Not even classic rock. I don't even think there is a classic rock song in there. Maybe. I don't think so. Some of my favorite songs, at least sort of. If I had to put them into 1 hour, I covered it. I got some really bitchin' songs tomorrow. A couple cool versions of bitchin' songs. You should join me. All that said, thank you guys, and we will continue this trek forward. Adonai, as they would say, right? Adonai. I love you guys. Where we go one, of course, we go all. It is on the Fringe, and we will 100th monkey. We're going to do this. I swear to God, we're going to do this. I love you guys. It's on the Fringe.
Meditation is supposed to be fun. It's not something you do as a grim duty. The trouble with religion as we know it is that it is so mixed up with grim duties. We do it because it's good for you. It's a kind of self-punishment. Well, meditation, when correctly done, has nothing to do with all that. It's a kind of digging the present. It's a kind of grooving with the eternal now. And brings us into a state of peace where we can understand that the point of life, the place where it's at, is simply here and now.
This moment is the creation of the universe. It's starting now. If you look back and wonder whether there was a big bang a long time ago, all you'll see is vanishing traces. The big bang is happening now. This is when the world begins. You're doing it. Only you're not doing it by straining. A you deeper than the straining you is doing all this. The same you that is growing your hair and coloring your eyes and making your thumbprints and all that. You don't think about it. You don't strain muscles to do it. But that is what is creating the world. Here it comes. Now. So instead of thinking that the past is the reality which explains everything that happens now, let's look at now.